So when I think about 2016, right, this is a year where there's an extraordinary amount of interest in politics and it's in this campaign, right? In the political realm, everybody's like really obsessed with what's going on in the presidential election. In the cultural realm, there's been nothing people have been more obsessed with than the show you're in, right? And yet the show you're in, unlike our presidential election, which is hugely divisive, your show's been like hugely unifying, right? The right loves it, the left loves it. I know there's a lot of things that are surprising to you and to everyone about the success of Hamilton, but how surprised are you that there's been so much ideological kind of coming together over the greatness of the show?
I was talking to a friend of mine and we were talking about the show and I said, it kind of feels like church. You know, you get in a fight in the schoolyard on a Friday, but you're sitting in Sunday school on Sunday morning and everybody's there because you're supposed to be there and you know you need to be there because you're going to get something from it or your parents drug you. But either way, you walk out of church not so mad. You know, you've made up, you've figured some, you know, kind of let things calm down a little bit. Nobody wants to do that in this day and age because it seems like the kid who's in the middle of the schoolyard swinging on everybody and screaming is the one that gets all of the attention. So there's that.
Yeah.
Our show welcomes everybody to come in under the banner of America ain't perfect, but America's trying. And they were trying back then, and they had the same kinds of fights and the same kind of divisiveness, if not more so, and yet we're still here having the arguments. So that says something to a greater, I think the greater point, which is it's a really good idea.
Right.
We have to keep trying to find it.
When people talk about how divisive this current election year is, having done this musical, do you feel like you have a greater sort of tolerance for division, knowing what you know about the Founding Fathers and the fractious debates the duels they used to get into?
I think I at least have a little more patience for the process of it, and just accept that this is where we are, and try to find ways to, you know, part of doing this show is a means by which you can push against the ocean a little bit and say, hey, there's a better way that we can do it. Eventually everyone gets tired. Eventually everyone gets exhausted from it, you know, and unfortunately that usually is the voting public, and that once the election is over with, everyone's exhausted, so no one wants to be involved anymore. But my hope is that a show like Hamilton keeps that interest peaked, keeps those 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids saying, I'm going to go ahead and pay a little bit more attention in civics class. I'm going to figure out a little bit more about what happened before I was born so that I can understand the context, have a context for what's happening now.
You still have this, though, I want to come back to the thing I was thinking about a second ago, which is it still strikes me as strange, right? There's an inherently radical thing that you're doing, right? You're an African-American man playing a founding father, a white founding father. The whole show is basically non-white.
Right.
That's kind of a radical notion. It doesn't surprise me that the left loves Hamilton for the reasons that it does. But Dick Cheney, you know, tons of conservative columnists, all these people on the right who've been lovers of Hamilton from the moment you guys first came out. Does that surprise you?
Personally, I'm portraying a man who was guided by honor, a sense of duty. I think that there are plenty of honorable people on the right, as much as there are honorable people on the left. Yeah. So in terms of what my character portrays on stage, I think that beyond the mythologizing of Washington, it's nice to be able to get a glimpse of, you know, what his words sound like in real time, which is obviously something that none of us have been able to experience for 200 years.
One day.
But, you know, the same things that are going to appeal to a Dick Cheney are the same things that can appeal to our President Obama as he's sitting in the audience, and these are men who are lovers of our country, lovers of our ideals. At some point, their ideas diverged. You know, maybe they never were on the same wavelength, but whatever drew them into public service, I think that the essence of that is in our show. I think that the essence of that is something that we're all trying to cling to. In some point, life just sort of takes us in different paths, but there's honor in that. You know, when you say respect the office, even if you don't respect the man, that means something. I was raised that way. I'm looking over your shoulder at that Jesse Jackson for President poster. Yeah. It's the first political speech I ever watched in my entire life. I remember watching that.
88.
Yeah, my grandparents made sure that my sister and I were sitting very still and very quiet and watching his speech at the Democratic convention, and it just, those moments aren't lost. Those moments are still there.
And yet there are parts of the show, I mean, one of the big applause lines is immigrants get the job done, right? You talk about slavery. At one point your character steps sort of away from the issue, which is figurative and literal,
Yeah,
right? And
that's what they
as
did.
far as history is concerned. That stuff, I mean, if we're talking about litigating incendiary topics in the court of public opinion, immigration and race in this country, I mean, we are as divided maybe as we have been in a long time over those two issues. And yet, to John's point, there are a lot of people that embrace the musical on whole. Does that surprise you?
No. No. I mean, we tend to do in the show what they did back then, which was they kicked it down the road. They appeased, the different interests, and there's always a bit of irony as a black man playing a slaveholder.
Yeah.
Black men own slaves, and not to any. I think it was negligible in terms of like the greater whole. It's not something that I've reconciled myself personally with. I don't like that. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, these brilliant men of the age owned people that looked like me. But as an actor, being able to tell a story that addresses that greater idea and that greater story, it doesn't ignore it, but it allows us to tell the story. If we were to try to tackle slavery in 2.5 hours, just stop. In 200, 400 years, that hasn't happened. So, but what we're doing is portraying what these men did at that time, and so that kind of, I think it allows us to see it and be considerate of it and not ignore it, but just say that that's another one of the issues that we're still sort of trying to tackle.
So here you are, you're this guy who lives here in New York City and plays George Washington. You're in a show where I would say, and we were talking about this a little bit before this interview, about the kind of substancelessness of this presidential election. There's more substantive argument about the shape of what our government should look like, more actual substance that gets debated in the two cabinet battles in Hamilton than we've seen in months in this presidential election.
Sure.
Like, how do you, as you live that out, these really great, relatively intellectually rich debates on stage, and then you look outside the stage door, outside the Richard Rodgers Theater, and see what's going on in the presidential election, what does that make you think? How do you react to what's happening in the actual public square of 2016?
I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that those arguments aren't more accessible to me. I'm frustrated that I haven't been able, and it's anything short of going to DC, I haven't seen many of our congressional leaders have any kind of debate or discourse. I see, talking heads and surrogates on television for the candidates, but I don't see any of the congressmen or women who are either running for election or have been elected bring any of these issues to bear. I don't see coverage, just like I don't see coverage of the floods that are happening in Louisiana right now. Like, it's the biggest tragedy since Sandy, and yet nobody's talking about that because it's not moving the dial when it comes to, who's buying ad time on any particular network. It's very frustrating to be the kind of, to be a consumer of information and have to look that incredibly hard for it because of the structure of, the network structure and how we're used to hearing about our public discourse, our debates. Who's watching C-SPAN? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the programming on C-SPAN, It's there if I have to, if I have an hour to look for it. But it's just really frustrating that you can't get to more of the substance because that doesn't seem to move the dial. And I'm not blaming the media. I'm simply saying that it's not accessible. And as a citizen of the country, like, I need Washington to make more of an effort to let me know what the issues are. I need them to come to me and say, look, I'm not going to tell you what to think, but this is what the information is. Let us know. Let's have a dialogue. Let's have a discourse. Let us know what you're feeling. Let us know what moves the dial for you personally, how it affects you, and let that be the thing that drives the conversation in our country. I'm not apathetic. I'm just very frustrated.
You're a West Wing fan, right?
Oh, yes.
Big political junkies
Very much so.
on the cast of Hamilton.
Yeah.
Have you? I mean, like, what's the talk? I mean, you guys follow what's going on. You're in a political musical about the presidency. I mean, how much have you followed the events of the last year?
It's tricky because we've met almost over half of the sitting cabinet right now. They've all been to the show.
Some multiple times.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
a few times. We spent a little time in Washington, which was kind of nice.
At the White House?
Yes, we did. And we've been, we've met Supreme Court judges, justices, we've met, just such a incredible array of people who, from the Beltway and entertainment and everything. We have a lot of, we were putting the show together, there was a lot of conversation about it, just because it was easy to see the relevance of what was happening and what we were talking about, and we were still sort of understanding and discovering what our show was.
Were you gassed when like cabinet secretaries are coming to the? Were you like, oh my God, there's John Kerry in the audience?
Yes, a few times. Yeah, absolutely. None of that is lost on us. It's just anytime you get to perform.
Do you feel like your performance is affected by that?
I think that I wouldn't say that. I mean, this particular show is so hard that you got to like stay in the slot with it. But of course, it's incredible to be to have opinion makers and world shapers in our midst, and to know that what we're doing can affect them is really a beautiful thing. And it's just you wake up thinking that. Like, I didn't come to New York 20 some odd years ago and think that this was going to be a reality.
Right.
We were in the East Room of the White House performing for the president this last spring, and it was all over. And he stood up and he thanked me and Lynn and the cast. And when he had finished his remarks, we were taking pictures and about to take pictures, and I couldn't contain it anymore. I burst out crying. I found one of my castmates. I had to just find his shoulder so I could like compose myself. And I stood up thinking about it. I was like, my grandmother, who was so concerned about us being woke, being citizens, being black, active citizens in our community and in our country. She dreamt so many things for me, but she never dreamt that moment. You know what I mean? Like but she gave me the rocket fuel to keep pushing forward, and this opportunity arose, and I would just like to think there were 100 or so kids in that audience that day, and that's the thought that I have when I think about the effect of the show, that we keep being put in places where we can reach someone whose mind is still willing to hear and willing to learn and willing to not have the kinds of opinions that keep them on one side or the other, but that just allow them to be curious and discover all of the ideas. They want to see all of the different stuff. And when you can be in that position, life is good. The work is good.
Yeah. So Obama, right? Having given the speech at the convention, which is really his last really big political speech, like a multi-million audience,
Sure.
He's got one more really big speech to give that's planned, unless there's some tragedy or some war or something, right? Which is his farewell address, right? You have meditated a lot on the farewell address because you sang a song about it in the show one last time. Washington, our first president, that was a really important thing. Our first black president, now about to do the same thing. What do you think, to the extent that you understand how Washington thought about what he had to do with that speech, how do you think Obama will be thinking about what he has to do, and what do you hope to hear him talk about in his farewell address?
I think a lot about that in terms of where he was, which was desperately seeking relief from the office that he held.
Right.
He needed to be done.
Right.
And that's, for me, every night, that's what the song really represents, is an expression of the strength and hope that the office gives you, but also the fact that it breaks you down till you have nothing left, till 3 words are all you can really say. And that's what One Last Time really represents to me, and in endeavoring to pass that sense of hope off to the American public and the American idea at large. President Obama filled, I think, a majority of the country with hope in 2008, and the campaign, leading up to it. I was hopeful. And not just the symbolism of seeing his face, every time I looked at the president, knowing that man looks like me, more like me than, and knows my experience more than perhaps any other president in the history of our country. My hope is that he is able to reignite that fire in all of us, and remind us yet again that it is not about winning or losing. It's about moving the ideas forward and finding new ones, and finding better ways to be Americans, and to represent not only this country and the people that have come before it, but to provide some sort of life and hope for our kids.
he's a big fan of the musical,
Yeah.
but he also sort of takes credit a little bit because
Well,
how
absolutely.
real is that? Because I know he heard the mixtape and Lynn went to the White House.
I
Can he
kinda-
claim any part of the sort of Hamilton
Well,
success?
you know,
correct the record or don't.
Presidential prerogative, right? I would say he certainly helped. Knowing Lynn as well as I do, if he didn't have that moment to write for and to perform it and to find the spark in the words that came to him early on, who can say that whether or not it would have?
That sounds like credit is being given.
I think Lynn gives him a little bit of credit with a wink. You know, I mean, look, the president has been so gracious and so kind to us. And yeah, if I were in his shoes, I'd take credit for it too.
You guys decided to do the fundraiser for Hillary, right?
Yes.
So like I was thinking about this before. It makes perfect sense. I mean, I imagine almost everybody in the show is a Democrat, like most people in show business are. You know, most people who finance shit in Hollywood, it's like so overwhelmingly Democratic. At the same time, this is a huge profit-making endeavor. Like it's a commercial enterprise, right?
Sure.
You guys that make millions of dollars, right? There aren't that many commercial enterprises, and certainly like in the entertainment world, you don't see like Iron Man like endorse a candidate or do a fundraiser for a candidate. You might see the studio head do it or an actor do it, right? Was there any debate internally on with you guys about whether it was a good idea to sort of cast your lot with Hillary Clinton in that way?
I don't know that we've cast our lot as much as we just made it available. I mean, the structure of what that evening is that people who want to give to the campaign and want to see a show, it's a bit of a structure that's already been in place for decades, you know, fundraiser. It's a dinner, it's a night at the theater, it's however they structure it. As a cast, you know, Jeffrey came to us and said that it's something that he would like to extend to the DNC.
Yeah.
And I don't think that many had a problem with that.
Right.
It was more, I mean, it was tough because it was an added show to an 8-show week, and it's a incredibly difficult show to do 8 times a week, let alone add another, you know, on our day off. I can't speak for the cast. I can speak for myself in that I was more than happy to make that show happen. I was more than honored to be in the presence of Secretary Clinton. I'm more than happy to lend my personal support behind her campaign. Yeah. And you know, as for you know, to a person, no one called out. Right. Everyone was there.
Right. Just for the record, Jeffrey is.
I believe so.
Jeffrey.
I believe Jeffrey has supported.
No. Jeffrey who?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Sellers, our producer.
Sellers, your producer, right? So just for the.
Yeah.
For those who don't know Jeffrey on a
you know, I'm
first
just
name
throwing
basis.
around names
Yeah,
because
you know,
everybody
Jeffrey.
knows
I'm like
everybody.
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Yeah, I was
you
like,
know?
oh, interesting. Jeffrey Katzenberg's
Yes.
involved in this.
That's the only single name Jeffrey I know.
Sorry.
you
Sorry
know?
about that.
Like, that's
Maybe
okay.
Immelt.
Yeah.
You talk about the job of president being exhausting, but the job of playing the president is also presumably exhausting. 8 shows a night. You are a veteran. I don't know if people understand your amazing career on Broadway. I mean, you have In the Heights, you have The Lion King, where you played Simba.
Yeah. The first gig.
Talk to us a little
Which
bit.
is, of course, actually Barack Obama's origin story.
Yeah,
by
right.
Summer
Haha,
Cats.
that's a joke.
Remember that joke from the
yeah.
White House Correspondents'
Yeah.
Dinner?
See, there it is.
He made that joke. Remember that?
Did you see the eye roll?
Yeah, I saw it. Oh, I saw it. I'm just saying that way you've actually played 2 presidents in some weird.
Yes, right.
There it is.
In some weird universe.
That was a joke the White House made itself. Okay, everybody. Remember.
There it is.
So, here's my question: this show is different, though, not just because of the subject matter, but because of the relationship you have with Lynn, who I know you've called your sort of like little brother. You guys have known each other for a long time.
Sort of. That's my man.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about the emotional energy of putting a show like this together in comparison to other shows that you've done, which are equally blockbuster, huge shows.
I'm older than I was when I played Simba.
That's a cop-out, Chris.
Nah, that's real. It's
40's the new 30.
Yeah, believe it. Until you do 8 shows a week with no
Yeah,
off
okay.
season.
140 is the new 60.
Yeah, believe
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And then when you're done, then it kind of starts to roll back. Yeah. It is exhausting in a way that unlike any other show that I've ever done. In that there are more words in this show than than almost every Shakespeare play. And because the whole thing is sung through, once that first downbeat happens, it doesn't stop. So you've got intermission, but that's not really, that's sort of, a 5-minute recovery and start adding the layers of velvet and things that you have to wear for the second act. So it's different, It's 2 hours and 40 some odd minutes. It's a long show. We're performing an opera 8 times a week.
Yeah.
Opera singers sing maybe 3 times a month. It's a different kind of, just from a technical performance aspect. And life happens outside of
It
doing
does?
that. Yeah,
Outside of work?
So you have to, you miss a lot. That's how it works. But you have to try to keep up with it. You try, so you walk in the door. I always say that you're never 100% when you do a Broadway show. You're navigating whatever percentage of energy, health, strength you have. And because this show, everyone in the show, we're climbing this mountain in the first act. And in the second act, we're all coming down the same mountain. And emotionally, we have very much the same kind of experience that the audience has, in that where it ends up and where we're looking toward at the end of that show is we're all awash with it. That's why after the show, the stage becomes a green room. I generally am not leaving the theater for an hour after the curtain goes down, because it takes that much time to come down.
Right.
And to be able to have conversations and hang out with people that have come, and you're taking pictures and you're signing stuff, and you're just communing with folks, because it becomes a very spiritual experience by the end of the show. Everyone has sort of worshipped the altar of America for a while, and we're all sort of hung over a little bit by it, and people are trying to process what they've seen or what they felt, as are we, So it's a unique experience in that way, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done and the best thing I'll ever do.
Lynn wrote a bunch of stuff for the show that didn't make it in. He wrote a lot more songs than actually are in the current show, even though the show has a lot of songs in it. There was Washington stuff that didn't make it in, right? There was a Valley Forge scene, Washington's death. Is there stuff that you miss, that you're kind of still a little bummed isn't in the show that was Washington related?
I'm gonna sound like a homer when I say this, but no, not a single thing.
Really?
I was a part of the process from pretty much its inception, from the moment they started adding a voice outside of Lynn's to what we're doing now. And so I've seen all of the iterations, but the thing with Lynn and the thing that he wrote, he had a real clear idea of who Washington needed to be. And I guess at some point Chris reminded him of it sort of merged with who he perceived Washington to be. There's not a wasted word in my whole show. There's not a word that is missing. There's not a moment where I feel like, oh, that could have been just a little bit expanded a little bit more. And for the first time in my career, I'm kind of saying I'm glad there's not more.
You're like, I'm done with my lines.
Well, because it's enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
There are no sort of there's no ellipses at the end of anything that I say. It's enough. It really sort of gets to the heart of their relationship in really sort of in relatively quick ways, but they're complete.
I can't believe there's an actor who's basically you know what?
Yeah, I'm good.
I wouldn't have wanted
I'm
more
good.
solos.
I'm good.
Valley Forge? Who needs Valley Forge?
I'm never going to say that.
That
But
again,
you know
right.
what though? But he merged what that Valley Forge scene.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Right?
that's all right. We
That
don't need
kind of
that.
sucked. No.
Chopping out the cherry tree, I don't need that either.
Yeah, that wasn't real anyway. That's a lie. But he merged the Valley, what was a Valley Forge scene, into the beginning of what is Stay Alive now.
Right.
Going into the Charles Lee, John Lawrence duel.
Yeah.
So there's so many. They just found, he and Tommy and Alex, they found a way to just meld all of those elements together. I'm not missing anything. It's all there.
Is it, given the deep weave of the emotional fabric of this show, is it hard when cast members depart and new people come in to fill their roles?
Yeah, it's hard.
I mean, is it a mourning process? Is there a benediction of sorts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mourned when Lynn left. And that's no slight to Javier Munoz, because Javier took over the role for Lynn when he left in The Heights. So I've had so many, reps on stage with Javi in that show and in this one. We know each other's process, and we have a way of communicating really, really well, and we're really tight. But, before every show, I used to go kick Lynn's chair and, make sure he was cool, because our dressing rooms are really close. I would just check in with him before a show. That's just what we do. And I missed that a little bit. But now I go and bang on Javi's, the same dressing room and check in on Javi before we start. It's each show it's a different teammate. So you have to find out where he likes it where he likes to get the ball on the court. Right. You know, you have to sort of figure out that new rhythm, and then you just go.
It still must be weird though to have like so much of the original cast now gone. Like I mean, I know there are still a few people around, but Lynn's gone, Leslie Odom's gone, Debbie Diggs is gone. Like
Sure.
it must be, you're like among the big male leads. You're the last one who's left.
You're
right?
the elder statesman,
You're like,
statesman,
is
quite
that-
literally
Yeah, say
now.
that, right?
Yeah.
You had to say that.
Yeah, I did.
It's true, sort of.
Well, you're George Washington too.
You're the
I mean,
elder
he's
statesman.
the elder,
You're the
literally
elder
and
statesman even
figuratively.
before they
Yeah,
left. That's
exactly.
the truth. You're the
That's-
old man on the
that
cast.
was my bad
I'm
joke.
going to tell you a secret about the cast. First of all, the original company is like the '92 Dream Team. Like, it just will never happen again. You know, and it's not supposed to. It was supposed to happen then, and it did. And Jesus, was it amazing.
Yeah.
They don't put anybody on that stage that is not really, really good.
Yeah.
And the heartbeat of our show is not Lynn, it's not me, it's not Leslie or David, it's our ensemble. And they are the smartest, hardest working group of performers that have been assembled in a very long time on a stage. They are so good. Their work is so hard, and the fact that no one knows it's that hard is even more a tribute to how incredible they are. They are, when we're running on stage or off stage, you're not looking at us, you're looking at them. They're the real storytellers in the show, because they're just they carry us from one thing to the next, from one scene to the next, from one era and movement to the next. At one moment you're at a winner's ball, the next moment you're in the middle of a Battle of Yorktown, and it just makes sense. There's no sets, there's no trickery. It's our company, it's our ensemble, and they are spectacular. And that's what makes the whole show, that's what elevates the show no matter who's, performing.
So the first time I saw the show, the first thing I thought when I walked out was, okay, so I just saw something that's going to be around forever. Like, this will be, every high school in America will perform this show at some point. This history will get taught this way, like for 12-year-olds who are first encountering this. This is like the way in this vernacular that they will come to first encounter this history.
Right.
And then the Rockefeller Foundation wrote a big check and said, actually, make a curriculum, on this. So, like, I know you just said that the cast is like, the company is like the '92, the original cast like the '92 Dream Team. But this is also like, you'll never be in anything like this again. You'll never be in another thing that will live forever. Like, outside, long after you're gone, this will be a part of the fabric of American educational institution, the cultural institutions of the country. How does that make you feel? I mean, it just must be a hard thing to kind of reckon with.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not, I don't have to do that right now.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, okay, well, I'll just let it settle on me as time goes by. Since I'm so long in the tooth, I guess when I get in my rocking chair, I just. No, I think it's really great. I think that it's, history was the one thing that I was really interested in when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I consistently got A's in, that and music.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that there's another Lynn Miranda or Renee Goldsberry or Pippa Sue or Chris Jackson sitting in the classroom and having already memorized all 50 tunes on the CD, opens a page and reads the words of Abraham Lincoln in a slightly different way. Not that the words have to change, not that they have to be in meter or rhyme, but that he was a very real person who woke up in the morning and brushed his teeth and went to work and faced down all of these incredible challenges and felt all the way through it, while he was making decisions, while things were happening. I think that it's important. I think if this show has any power, it reminds us that, human beings are doing all of this. It's not just a date or a name or an event, but, human beings sort of moved through the world and made decisions and affected change, and they should be picking up the mantle to do the same thing.
I want to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
You love hip hop.
Love it.
Right? I mean, the show is delightful for anybody who enjoys the power of rhyme, right? Of all the lines that you deliver, what's the one that still as a couplet or a rhyme where you think, or every night when you do it, you're like, this is the one that you most
Your
enjoy.
personal hook.
Your
What's your personal
the
hook?
one you most enjoy uncorking every night.
It's in right-hand man, the venerated Virginian veteran whose men are all lining up to put me up on a pedestal, writing letters to relatives, embellishing my elegance and eloquence. But the elephant is in the room. The truth is in your face when you hear the British cannons go boom.
Plus, also like that end, the fact that it ends with a scenario,
Yeah.
Reference, like is like a kind of perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. You're great. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Chris.
Thank you.